Imagine you collapse on a busy street. Hundreds of people walk past you. Not one of them stops. And the strangest part? Every single one of them thinks someone else will handle it. This is not a thought experiment. This is Tuesday. The bystander effect is one of the most reliably reproduced findings in all of social psychology, and it says something deeply uncomfortable about the version of yourself you think you are. You probably believe you would stop. You would help. You are not like those people. But the research does not agree with you, and the research has been right far longer than your self-image has. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start with a murder. It was March 1964 in New York City, and a 28-year-old woman named Kitty Genovese was stabbed outside her apartment building in Queens. The attack lasted over half an hour. Her attacker returned twice. And according to the initial reporting, 38 witnesses watched from their windows and did nothing. Nothing. Not a single phone call. Not a single shout out the window. Now, the 38 witness number has been disputed by later researchers. Some witnesses did call out. The details are more complicated. But here is what is not complicated: Kitty Genovese died, and the response from the people who could have helped was catastrophically slow. That part is real. That part matters. And that part launched two young social psychologists into one of the most important research programs in the history of human behavior. John Darley and Bib Latane refused to believe that the witnesses were simply evil. They had a different hypothesis. What if the crowd itself was the problem? What if the very presence of other people made each individual person less likely to act? They designed an experiment. Participants sat in individual booths and communicated through an intercom, believing they were having a conversation with other students. One of the voices on the intercom began to have what sounded like a seizure. What Darley and Latane measured was how quickly, and whether, each participant went to get help. When participants believed they were the only person on the line, 85% of them left to find help within the first minute. But when they believed 5 other people were also listening, that number dropped to 31%. Same emergency. Same person in distress. The only variable was the number of witnesses. And that number alone cut the helping response by more than half. Why does this happen? Your brain runs on something researchers call diffusion of responsibility. It is exactly what it sounds like. When you are the only person present, the entire moral weight of the situation lands on you. 100% of the responsibility. 100% of the pressure. But the moment another person enters the scene, that weight splits. Add 10 people and suddenly your share is only 10%. Add 100 people and your individual obligation feels almost microscopic. Your brain is not being cruel. It is doing arithmetic. And unfortunately, the arithmetic is wrong in ways that get people killed. But diffusion of responsibility is only half the equation. There is a second force at work, and it is arguably stranger. Latane and Darley called it pluralistic ignorance. Here is how it works. You see something ambiguous, a person slumped on a bench, a sound from the next room, smoke coming under a door. You are not sure if it is an emergency. So you do what every socially calibrated human does. You look around at other people to see how they are reacting. And here is where it gets almost darkly funny. Every other person in that room is doing exactly the same thing. Everyone is looking at everyone else for a signal. Everyone appears calm because everyone is trying to appear calm while secretly scanning for information. And so the group collectively decides that nothing is wrong, because every individual in the group is using the group's false calm as evidence that nothing is wrong. In another Latane and Darley experiment, participants sat alone in a room filling out a questionnaire while smoke began to pour through a vent in the wall. When alone, 75% of participants reported the smoke within 2 minutes. Completely reasonable. When placed with two other participants who were secretly instructed to ignore the smoke, only 10% of real participants reported it within the same window. 10%. The other 90% sat there, filling out their questionnaires, occasionally glancing at what was now a room filling with smoke, and doing nothing. Because no one else seemed alarmed. And if no one else is alarmed, maybe you are overreacting. Your brain uses other people as a mirror. That is not a flaw. For most of human history, it was genius. Your ancestors survived in groups. Reading the group's behavior told you whether the rustling in the grass was a predator or just wind, whether the water was safe, whether the stranger approaching was a threat. The crowd was your external nervous system. But in modern emergencies, that system misfires. The crowd becomes a conspiracy of paralysis, each person borrowing their inaction from everyone else, nobody borrowing action from anyone. Now here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. You already knew about the bystander effect. You have probably heard of it. You may have learned about it in school, or watched a documentary, or heard it explained at a dinner party. And the research suggests that this knowledge helps almost not at all. Peter Fisher and his colleagues published a meta-analysis in 2011 reviewing 50 years of bystander effect research, and one of the consistent findings is that awareness of the phenomenon does not reliably produce immunity to it. You can understand the psychology completely, recite Darley and Lataine's findings from memory, and still freeze when the real moment arrives. Because in the real moment, your brain is not consulting your knowledge. It is running the same ancient social software it has always run. Awareness lives in your prefrontal cortex, the slow, deliberate, language-using part of your brain. The bystander effect operates somewhere much faster and much older than that. So is there anything that actually helps? Yes. And the answer is almost offensively simple. Specificity breaks the spell. When someone singles you out, when they point at you specifically and say, "You in the blue jacket, call 911 right now," diffusion of responsibility collapses instantly. The full weight lands on one person. That person acts. The social psychologist and author Robert Cialdini, whose research on social influence has shaped everything from public health campaigns to policy design, describes this as the single most effective emergency intervention: convert the bystander into an actor by removing all ambiguity about who is responsible. This is why emergency response training now teaches people to never just shout, "Someone call 911." You point. You make eye contact. You assign the task to a specific human being and you watch them pick up the phone. The crowd does not save people. Individuals save people. And individuals need to be activated one at a time. But there is something deeper here than emergency protocol, something that reaches into the texture of everyday life. The bystander effect does not only operate in dramatic crises. It operates every time a meeting goes wrong and nobody says anything. Every time someone in your office is clearly struggling and the team assumes HR will handle it. Every time a comment is made that everyone finds uncomfortable and the entire room decides that someone else will address it. Every time a friend disappears from the group chat and nobody individually reaches out because the group itself feels like a social safety net. The group is not a safety net. The group is a mirror. And if everyone in the group is quietly hoping someone else will act, the mirror only reflects shared inaction. Social psychologist Stanley Milgram, whose work on obedience and authority remains among the most cited in the field, spent years studying how urban environments reshape human connection. One of his findings was that density itself creates psychological distance. The more people around you, the more your nervous system learns to filter them out as background. The stranger on the subway platform is not a person with a name and a story, they are part of the scenery. This is how you survive sensory overload in a city. This is also how you walk past someone who needs help without your alarm system triggering it all. The modern city is, in a very real sense, a bystander effect generator. It scales diffusion of responsibility to its absolute maximum, surrounds you with pluralistic ignorance at every turn, and trains your perception to treat other humans as ambient noise. You are not a bad person for being shaped by this. But you are a person who has been shaped by it. And here is what you can actually do with that. The research on intervention consistently shows that the bystander effect weakens under 3 specific conditions. When you feel a personal connection to the person in need, even a manufactured one, even just a shared identity, a shared hometown, a shared shirt color. When the situation is clearly defined as an emergency rather than ambiguous. And when you have already mentally rehearsed what action looks like. Not observed it. Not read about it. Mentally rehearsed it. Imagined yourself, specifically, in the scenario, taking the specific action. Athletes call this visualization. Emergency trainers call it simulation. Your brain calls it a memory, because it cannot fully distinguish between something you vividly imagined and something you actually experienced. And a brain that has done something before is a brain that does it faster under pressure. So visualize it. Right now, not metaphorically. Think about the last crowded place you were in. Think about what an emergency would look like there. Think about what you would do, specifically, in the first 10 seconds. Think about who you would point to. Think about what you would say. This is not paranoia. This is the only known cognitive intervention that actually moves the needle on bystander paralysis. Because here is the truth that the last 60 years of research keeps arriving at, from every angle, through every methodology. The crowd is not a resource. The crowd is a diffusion machine. And the only antidote to the crowd is a single person who has decided, in advance, before the moment of pressure and social confusion, that when it matters, they will be the one who acts. Imagine you collapse on a busy street. Hundreds of people walk past you. And one person stops. Not because they were braver than the others. Not because the bystander effect had somehow skipped them. But because at some earlier point, they had quietly decided that someone else will handle it was not a thought they were willing to have. That decision, made in the calm before the crisis, is the only thing standing between statistics and survival. It turns out the most important moment in an emergency happens long before the emergency begins.